Then I'm giving you a huge round of applause, like our friends are too. Yay. And then I'm going to push mute whenever the spirit moves. You can go ahead and begin.
Have you thought about what questions you would ask a doctor if you just got life-changing news, like a diagnosis of a heart condition or cancer, or if you just got involved in a really bad accident? If you're anything like me, you probably haven't thought about that at all until the moment that it comes. When it happened to me, I accidentally shot myself with a nail gun at work. It was a silly accident that turned into a serious condition because instead of knowing how to speak for myself in the doctor's office, I was struggling to find my words. Fortunately, my partner stepped in and she knew all the right questions to ask. She acted as my patient advocate and she helped save my life. So that you can be an effective advocate for others or for yourself, I want to take this speech and explain to you who an advocate is, what they do, and how you can be an effective advocate. First, I want to help you understand who an advocate is. The Joint Commission considers a patient advocate to be the person who's making sure that proper communication is happening so that healthcare providers can give a patient what they need to deal with their condition, their symptoms, and their concerns. A patient can definitely be their own advocate, but if you're really sick or really injured, you might not have the capacity to speak for yourself. So it's often been found that having a trusted person by your side can really help smooth out communication. One study found that during the COVID pandemic, having a family member at bedside in ICU patient stays could help facilitate communication not just between the patient and the providers, but also between providers who often weren't in the same room at the same time. To give you an example of some of the information you might miss when dealing with your own care, I want you to take a moment and look at this label for ibuprofen. If this looks like a ton of information that you don't want to read right now, I totally understand. But that means you're also not going to read it when you're really sick. So you'd miss important information about when you might develop a stomach bleed or when you should talk to a doctor before you take ibuprofen. And if you miss that information, it could be potentially life-threatening. So next, I want you to understand why advocacy is so important in smoothing out these communication difficulties. The problem with communication tends to arise because patients have one set of context and providers have a different set of context. Because patients are thinking about their prior experience and how they feel right now, and the provider is thinking about what they can see on their diagnostic tools and what they know from their experience, patients often tend to feel like they're being a little misunderstood. After I'd shot myself with the nail gun and I was leaving the doctor's office, I was receiving some information that would be critical to keeping myself healthy in the future. And as an example of a communication diagram, you can see here that I was thinking about how my patient had a history of substance abuse and I had a high pain tolerance the second my doctor mentioned I was going to get a narcotic prescription. So instead of listening to the other information the doctor gave me, I instead interrupted him to tell him that I'd really like to avoid taking narcotics. As soon as I told him that, he thought about the fact that he just pulled a nail out of my finger, and he really felt like that was going to be a painful experience moving forward. So rather than trying to find out what my concern was, he simply reassured me that I would definitely want to take the narcotics. So as a result, I left the doctor's office with a prescription for narcotics, but without the understanding that those narcotics might mask the pain of a bone infection and what I should do if that bone infection happened to set in. So finally, I want you to understand how you can be an effective advocate. Being an effective advocate is all about asking effective questions, because effective questions reduce the likelihood that you feel like doctors are hiding information from you that could be necessary for your care. One system for effective patient advocacy is called the Ask Me 3 system. This Ask Me 3 system encourages you to ask your provider what your main problem is, what you need to do about it, and why it's so important for you to do that. One study found that handing out pamphlets with the Ask Me 3 system printed on them before doctor's appointments made patients who left feel like they understood their condition better and that they were more satisfied in their overall care. If I had asked the doctor what my problem was, they would have mentioned that I had just broken a bone and pierced my skin with a high-powered framing nail, and it was very likely I'd develop an infection. So I needed to continue taking antibiotics, and if the pain in my finger ever got worse, I needed to return to the doctor's office right away. because if I didn't return, I could develop a serious bone infection that could threaten my finger, my hand, or my entire life. If I had that understanding, I could have communicated that the pain in my finger really wasn't that bad right then. I could have avoided taking opioid narcotics, and I would have recognized the pain in my finger a lot sooner to get care a lot faster. So at the end of my 2019 would be one that was happy and healthy instead of fighting a bone infection. Thankfully, my partner was able to step in though and make sure that I lived a long, healthy, happy life. In conclusion, I hope you have a better understanding now of what patient advocates do, who can be one, why it matters so much, and what you can do to be an effective advocate. If you have a patient or healthcare condition that you think might impact your healthcare in the future, start thinking about what questions you want to ask about it now, so that when the day comes, you're able to ask those questions and get the care that you deserve.
Yay! Red. Stop recording.